which is a very deceptive name, by the way, for a pro-abortion lobby, initiated a petition drive to amend our state constitution to include the right to abortion. This was funded by a group out of Washington, D.C. To challenge this, Representative John Hanson from Del Rapids and Leslie Unruh, director of the Alpha Center, formed the Life Defense Fund to fight the good fight for what is moral, true, and good. In the beginning, we worked hard to inform people and urge them not to sign the petition. You may remember the slogan, "Decline to sign." During this time, evidence of fraud was collected, and some of it was even videotaped, as Dakotans for Health used deceptive practices in gathering signatures. Many were led to believe that they were signing a petition to repeal the grocery tax, because this group was also collecting signatures for that initiative. Because this group was collecting signatures, this prompted the state legislature to pass a bill enabling citizens the chance to remove their name from the petition if they so wished. The abortion petition was touted as pro-life, pro-family, and folks were told that it would protect women's health. We know better. Because of their deceptive practices, Life Defense filed a lawsuit against Dakotans for Health in an effort to remove Amendment G from the ballot. This was going very well. The judge agreed to hear their case. It was to begin this coming week, but unfortunately, the court staff failed to get it on the docket. So now we're not sure if the case will be heard before the election or not. But this makes all of the efforts that we have made so far to defeat this bill even more important. As we get close to the election, there will be a huge, well-funded push from the abortion lobby to convince people that this amendment is needed to protect women's health. Research has shown that about 40% of the population will decidedly vote pro-life, and then an equal number, 40 to 45%, will be decidedly pro-abortion. It's the 10% in the middle, the undecideds, that we have to educate. We need your help, and tonight we'll give you some information to do just that. With that, I would like to introduce our guest speaker, who is a true champion for the unborn. Dr. Patti Giebink is an OB/GYN physician who has over 30 years of experience delivering babies here and in hospitals overseas. While working in her private practice in Sioux Falls, she began working part-time performing abortions at Planned Parenthood, the only abortion clinic in South Dakota. Eventually, she closed her practice to work full-time at Planned Parenthood, but left 1 year later in September of 1997. She has not performed any abortions since. Because of her experience, she is uniquely qualified to speak on the dangers of Amendment G, and will give you a better understanding of the differences between elective abortion versus the practice of obstetrics, which is caring for both mother and baby. For more information on her journey to becoming pro-life, she wrote a book, Unexpected Choice, An Abortion Doctor's Journey to Pro-Life. This chronicles her career and her transformation, and gives readers insight into both sides of this divisive issue. Her books are available here tonight for purchase on this blue table over here on the left. Also on that table is a copy of the article that she had written for a medical journal that was reprinted in the Central Dakota Times. So if you missed that, there's copies of that article on that table as well. Dr. Patti is now retired and lives in Chamberlain and enjoys bicycling, reading, and prairie gardening. Before she begins, I just want to add that we will open the floor to questions at the end of her talk. Please help me give Patti a warm welcome.
introduce people a little too loud. Anyway, thank you, Mary, for the introduction. So, this is the third time this week I've, like I told Mary, driven east. Wednesday I was in Sioux Falls for debate, and Thursday I was in Mitchell, also for a debate, but I was just back up, so that wasn't too bad. What does Amendment G say? Well, first of all, it was purposely written to be vague and broad. It's kind of like, does it say what you can't do? I like to tell people that the main thing is to differentiate between elective abortion and care of a pregnant woman when she develops complications. So in our law, South Dakota law, it defines the elective abortion with the intent to end the life of a separate, unique human being. So your intent is to kill the baby. That's your intent. So in taking care of a pregnant woman who develops complications, my goal, my intent, is a healthy mom and a healthy baby. Now we know that there are some common complications like high blood pressure, diabetes, preeclampsia, things that are just kind of bread and butter stuff. And most of the time, we can balance the baby and the mom and get them to some point where we have a healthy mom and a healthy baby. There are some rare complications that sometimes force us to deliver the baby earlier, but our intent and our goal is still a live, healthy baby and a healthy mom. So don't be confused, because a lot of this stuff that you're hearing on the media is not right. And all you have to say in your mind is this an elective abortion where the intent is to end the life of the human being? Or are we trying to preserve a mom and a baby? Once you make that distinction, everything else becomes clear. And it's disappointing to think that doctors are getting confused on this. Part of it is because the pro-abortion people have purposely targeted doctors to make them think that they can't take care of a pregnant woman if abortion is illegal. And that is absolutely not true. Why do women seek abortions? Why do women, mostly young women, a few older women, seek abortions? Financial? I heard, well, I just can't afford another child. Okay, so financial. Aren't there resources out there to help pregnant women who need help with finances? There's community resources. And yes, we can pass laws that provide more financial aid for women with pregnancies. So financial, social. I heard when I was doing abortions at Planned Parenthood, my dad would kill me if he found out I was pregnant. How many dads do we have in this room? How many dads that have a daughter? Okay. Now, if your daughter came up to you, she's 17 years old, and she got pregnant, and she came up and she said, you know, Dad, I'm pregnant, what am I going to do? You wouldn't kill her. You might be disappointed, but I'm sure you could work it out. So that's one social reason. There's a lot of social reasons. So as a society, we could deal with the social reasons and the financial reasons without resorting to killing the baby. And I think that's where especially the church needs to head, is helping women with a crisis pregnancy in whatever way. If she's got little kids and this is another one, you know, the church can sometimes help them financially, or there's other community resources, or if you can, offer to babysit. And there's a lot of things you can do to help women to get past this crisis. And it's, 9 months is 9 months. It's not permanent. Okay. Did any of you hear on the news that there were 2 deaths in Georgia from chemical abortion? Okay. The take-home message on those deaths is they died because they took a dangerous medication that is not regulated by the FDA. That's why they died. And the 2 cases are extremely different. So one woman, Amber, 28-year-old, she had twins at 9 weeks. She went to an abortion clinic, got the medication legally, took the first pill in the clinic, went home, and the next day took the next pill. Sometimes there's a succession of pills after that. So after several days, she was having heavy bleeding, vomiting. I probably shouldn't read this since you're eating. But she was passing out, so she went to the emergency room. And in the emergency room, they diagnosed her with an infection and started her on antibiotics, but did not do the primary treatment to take care of this retained tissue, which would be a DNC. And we've all heard of DNCs, they're not uncommon. But because they were afraid of the law, of the abortion ban, they were afraid, so they waited 20 hours. And unfortunately, they did a DNC, then they did a hysterectomy, and Amber died on the table, never made it out of the room. So she died because she took dangerous abortion pills on her own, at home, nobody to call, can't call the abortion clinic, can't talk to the abortion doctor if there even was a doctor there. So the FDA has unregulated these dangerous pills. So now the second patient, Candy, had a number of medical conditions, lupus, diabetes, and she got her medications online. You can go online and get these medications. Hopefully, they actually are what you think you're getting, because it may not be, and apparently it wasn't. She went on a website called Aid Access. Several days she was found in her home unresponsive. And when they did the autopsy, she had retained tissue, no surprise, because oftentimes it doesn't complete itself. But they also found in her blood lethal doses of Benadryl, Tylenol, and fentanyl. So, what could have helped her? Well, if she would have gone to an abortion clinic, or at least sought true medical help from the beginning, she's one who had high risk. She should have been admitted to the hospital, taking care of her diseases, and if she was worried about her illnesses in the pregnancy, as an OB doctor, we take care of that. So if she was seeking an illegal abortion through the mail, that was so high risk for her. But again, it wasn't the medical, it wasn't the hospital, it was the fact that she ordered the medication, thought she was getting the abortion pills, may or may not, she may have got some other stuff. So it was the medication she took that was dangerous and caused her death. So, right now, even though we have a near total ban in South Dakota, you can still bypass that and go online and get these dangerous medications. And unfortunately, the FDA refuses to regulate it. So you don't have to have an ultrasound, which would date your pregnancy. You don't have to see a doctor. You can go either online or do kind of the remote thing with someone. It's just so unregulated. Okay, so what does this have to do with Amendment G? So even pro-choice people should vote against Amendment G. Now, one of the reasons that they say, the pro-abortion people, is let's restore Roe. Okay, so Roe was passed over 50 years ago. Do we want to go backwards in time? And if you actually look at the language in Amendment G, this is different than Roe. It's more vague, more broad. For instance, when I was working at Planned Parenthood, we were under Roe. And so under Roe, there were numerous regulations and protections in the South Dakota law to protect women. Informed consent, there's a bunch of them, I'm going to try to write them down. Informed consent, qualifications for clinics and the people doing the abortion, screening for coercion or manipulation. I mean, there's just a whole host of them. If you go and look into the South Dakota law, there are pages and pages of laws that were passed to protect women. And that's the focus, is we need to protect women. So even basic health and safety standards are not allowed. I mean, sure, there's some baseline ones, but it says if you read Amendment G, there can be no regulations in the first trimester and only a few regulations in the second trimester. So that means we can't do parental notification. We can't do true informed consent. We can't add anything on. It's wide open. I like to say, you know, you can drive a Mack truck through it, because it doesn't say you can't do stuff, and it says you can't write any regulations or restrictions. So then they bring up, okay, what about rape or incest? And they throw out a number that's so totally unbelievable about how many rapes occurred in 18 months in South Dakota and how many pregnancies resulted. So I know rape is underreported, but pregnancies from rape is a real small percentage of the number of rapes. And I tell people, okay, so, you know, my heart goes out to any woman who's been raped, and I have done a lot of rape exams. I've gone to court and testified for the evidence. So one traumatic event, should you follow that up with another traumatic event? Or is it better and a more natural process to follow things through and give a baby up for adoption? Now, I've met two people in my life that were the product of rape, that their biologic moms chose life and gave them up. One ended up in foster care, didn't have the greatest early childhood, but ended up being a wonderful guy and made a success, and unfortunately he got cancer and died in his 50s. And then I met a woman who didn't know that she was a product of rape until she was 18 years old. She knew she was adopted, but she didn't know she was a product of rape until she was 18 and could had access to her abortion or her adoption data. And she said she had a wonderful life. So why should we not go that route and subject a woman to a secondary trauma without dealing with the first trauma? Then also, another thing they talk about is, what about fetal anomalies? Or you could call them life-limiting conditions. So we could be talking about trisomy 18, and there's a number of really unusual genetic problems and things. So, right, under the current ban, that would not be legal. But there's other options. There's perinatal hospice, and I've talked to some people. I have a good friend who had one of these conditions, and she went to about 32 weeks, had the baby. The baby was born alive, did not live a long time, but the whole family was there and loved on this baby, and for the little bit of time that the baby had to live, it was a perfect life. Totally loved. And the family was able to deal with this in a healthier way than going through an abortion and not necessarily dealing with that loss. Okay, messaging. We won't win people if we make this a moral issue. Because I heard from the stories, most women who go to the abortion clinic, they know it's a human being, they know what they're doing, they just feel like they don't have any other choice. So we're not going to win over by making it a moral issue. If you say, well, life begins at conception, where do you go from there? You know, we need to persuade people. We need to be able to say, well, you know, we really need to protect women, and this is why. And this is why this amendment does not protect women. So it's too extreme for South Dakota. This would put us on the level of China, North Korea, you know, some of the worst situations for unlimited abortion. It doesn't protect women. It doesn't prevent human trafficking. So as a state, we can do better. And if we want to add rape and incest or fetal anomalies, we can do that through the legislature. We cannot change a constitutional amendment to our state constitution. We can't do that unless we go back and do this whole thing. So we need to nip this in the bud. And I like to think of Ezra 10:4. And there's three things I take away from Ezra 10:4. Rise up, take courage, and do it. So this is the time we need to rise up, be courageous, and stand up for what we believe in, which is overturning or not passing Amendment G. So I know there's other things I could talk about, but I would be happy if you guys would throw me some questions, and I'll try and answer them.
Patti,
Yes.
would you tell us about the story of your life and what happened to change your mind about abortion?
Well, that's a good question, and that's why I wrote my book. And for tonight, I'm going to give you guys a bargain, $10 instead of $15. That's pretty much my cost. So I'm selling books for $10. I've been told it's a good book because my co-writer is a storyteller. And a lot of it really, I mean, it was inspired by God. It took me 10 years to become pro-life, another 10 years to write a book. So it's a long process. Basically, after I got fired from Planned Parenthood and I was totally relieved, I went through a series of humbling events. My husband dumped me for a younger woman, you know, so on and so forth. And when I had nowhere else to turn, somebody said, well, why don't you go to this church? And I had no idea what this church was. I didn't know anybody that went there. I showed up, and God just totally changed my heart. And I started reading the Bible. And it became clear to me, after about a year, that God is the God of life. So I don't usually, like, especially if I'm in a secular thing, I don't usually tell that part of my story. But when I started doing this journey, I started running into a lot of women who had been hurt by abortion. And that was kind of novel to me because I had been kind of indoctrinated to think that abortion is good and, you know, there's going to be no regret, there's going to be no problems, and so on and so forth. And so as I met more and more women who had been hurt by abortion, it just is clear that we have a problem, and the solution is not more abortion. So back when abortion was legal in South Dakota, I think the maximum number of abortions per year was somewhere a little over 1,000. So if this bill goes through, I mean, who's to say there isn't going to be some abortion clinic that's going to see they want to make a lot of money, because you can make a lot of money, that's why Planned Parenthood is in it. even before the Dobbs decision and abortion became zero, the numbers were declining. I can't remember the numbers of the last year that it was legal. The other thing that's interesting, I was listening to the Secretary of Health, and since the abortion ban in South Dakota, I mean, oftentimes people on the other side will say, abortion is safer than childbirth. That's a lie. Or abortion decreases maternal mortality. That's a lie. So the statistic in South Dakota, in the time since Roe was overturned, maternal mortality has declined in South Dakota. That goes against all the stuff that they say. Another question, that's a good question, by the way. Sorry I can't you will enjoy reading my book. I hope you laugh and cry and think, and you don't have to read it straight through. You can get one chapter or another chapter. Look at the list of chapters and figure out which one is intriguing to you and read that.
In addition to voting no on G, what are some things that we can do to help spread the word?
Well, Life Defense Fund has something called Get Out the Vote. So when I said rise up, take courage, and do it, we need to talk to other people. I'm going to get out of my little introverted little cave, and my goal, not just putting up signs in my lawn, but my goal is to go talk to my neighbors with some of the no on G information. And even if they're not in our camp, we can still talk about it with love and compassion and respect. I think part of the problem is that if we slam into people and just say, well, you have to believe this, then nobody's going to listen to us unless they already believe it. So I have been trying in the last few years to talk to more people that probably don't necessarily line up with what I think. And sometimes I just talk about the weather. Or when I'm going to my neighborhood, I'm going to, make a concerted effort to just say, hi, I'm your neighbor, I live in that house over there, and I just want a few moments of your time to talk about an amendment that is dangerous for South Dakota, is dangerous for South Dakota women. And do my little spiel, doesn't take very long, and then move on. And if they slam the door in your face, what did Jesus say to his disciples? He said, just kick this dirt off your feet and just move on. So, and that's what we have to do. And it's not easy. You have to rise up, take courage, and do it. So just Ezra 10:4 is my scripture for this season. So what are the questions? Mary, you probably can have a question that I can answer.
Well,
Or want me to touch on?
yeah, a question came up because at the forum on Thursday night, we were talking about how abortion would be unregulated. Is it true? Well, how is it that a person doesn't have any training or credentials could actually perform abortions on the black market? I know that was brought up, so I just wondered about that.
So one of the things is there are South Dakota laws that have what do I want to say? That have standards for clinics and doctors. And I don't know the law close enough to say exactly how you would bypass this. But do you remember in Pennsylvania a few years ago, there was a story about Dr. Gosnell, and women died, babies died, women died. And it wasn't that they didn't have laws, it's that they didn't enforce them. So, how many people are going to push the envelope? Maybe they'll say they're a doctor, or the credentials are fake. I mean, really, the medical board should be able to sift through that. But there's some places out, there's wide open spaces where you could put up a clinic and have almost nobody check on it. that you can't write any regulations or restrictions other than the basic ones. You know, there's a lot of leeway for doing your own thing. What rumors have you heard? Anything? What did I forget to cover?
So obviously I'm avidly pro-life, but I don't feel I know a ton on the background of what all it's saying. Can you do a brief? I just always vote pro-life, you know what I mean, and encourage that, but if I don't have anything to brief.
So, background on the amendment?
Yeah, I don't have time to like read up, and I never get to see the news, and I got 8 of my own kids, and I'm, running.
There's some good stuff on the table. There's some good stuff, easy stuff to look at. You know, get something that has the wording which is real vague, and you read it and you go, what? I mean, the first time I read the amendment, I thought, well, this isn't so bad. And then I went, well, wait a minute, there's nothing here. It just is unregulated abortion. There's no protections for women. I think that blue handout by the Blues also has some stuff. You don't have to know everything cover to cover about this amendment, just that it does not allow for regulation in the first 13 weeks of pregnancy, 13 plus, and in the second trimester, you know, another 13 weeks would be, you know, roughly up to 27 weeks, a few regulations. I mean, what does that even mean? So it just takes somebody who wants to make money to come and say, well, it doesn't say I can't do this, it doesn't say I can't do this, and, you know, if I want to just give them minimal informed consent, just have them sign a form, and they don't really know what's happening, and then if you think these 2 women who died in Georgia is a big thing, I mean, just think of what can happen here. And I generally don't do this fear-mongering, but you know, when you think of how there can be no protections for women, you can't write it into the law if it's not in this amendment. So, trying to think what else. Read some of that stuff. I think just basically it's too extreme. There's no limits. There are very few limits. None in the first trimester. No regulations, no restrictions. It actually says that.
So you're saying they can just say, yeah, I want one, no reason, no whatever.
Yep.
And they have to do it.
Walk in, you know, the clinic can do their thing. When I worked at Planned Parenthood in Sioux Falls, the clinic was real small. It wasn't very clean. It was messy. You know, it was just not ideal because nobody made them make it any better. It's not like when you go to the clinic, you know, here and you've got a nice exam room, you've got cleanliness, you've got, you know, good equipment, and you've hopefully got nurses that are qualified and credentialed, and, you know, it's what you expect. But not all the, you know, like take Gosnell, his clinic was just a total disaster, and even the better clinics aren't that great. It's been a long time, but I've been to some other clinics, one in St. Paul, one in Colorado, and they all were the same. It's just, you know, they would have women kind of lined up in chairs, and, you know, in these lounge chairs, you know, those loungers, in various stages of, you know, being induced for an abortion. And it was loud, and it was just so unpleasant, and I thought, wow, I mean, is this what we're going to set up our state for? I could be wrong. This could pass, and all good things would happen, but there's nothing in the law to prevent that.
Is it correct that say a 15-year-old would not have to have the consent of her parents?
There's no regulations, no restrictions, no parental notification, no parental consent. You can't add that. It says no restrictions, no regulations.
Up to the point of birth.
Well, now that second part is a little hard to defend. I know that a lot of the signs say, you know, abortion up to the point of birth. I was listening to the lawyer on the other side, and I guess in my obstetrician, my OB doctor mind, I can't conceive of that. So to me, it's like, okay, in the first trimester especially, you know, there's that heartbeat bill that was 6 weeks. There's a fetal pain. Dobbs was a 15-week, which is early second trimester. So then mid-second trimester is like 22 weeks. You know, you're really getting into some areas that are more dangerous. And this would allow that. Only a few restrictions. The other thing, in our South Dakota law, it says the only exception is for the life of the mother. So as an OB doctor, you know, I've seen life of the mother situations. I've had to deliver babies early. I've, you know, done emergency C-sections. I've, you know, done all kinds of things to preserve the life of the mother. But at no time was my goal to kill the baby. So that's how that is. But you could have somebody who doesn't have the same ethics, and to them, well, in this there's a health, this would add a health exception, which could be depression, you know, sometimes it could be almost anything. I don't know if I've not seen a list of exceptions, but you know, there's a health exception, which is really vague. You know, life of the mother is mortifying. And again, that's not an elective abortion when you're taking care of a pregnant woman with complications. That's the practice of obstetrics. And we are all trained as obstetricians to take care of that. And sometimes, you know, there's not a good outcome 100% of the time, but in the last, especially the last 20 years, these neonatologists and the NICU, I mean, they can take 22-weeker, 24-weeker, 26-weeker, and have great outcomes. Not every 22-weeker is going to come out 100%. So I don't promote that as, yeah, let's deliver people at 22 weeks, because not every 22-weeker is going to survive. So even, do you remember when there was this Born Alive bill that if you have an abortion past the point of viability, meaning they can live outside the womb, that some of the abortions that were done during the second trimester, they would live. And to get around this, you could inject certain substances into the uterus that would kill the baby, and then you wouldn't end up with a live birth. But if a baby is born alive, it seems compassionate to provide resuscitation to that baby. It seems compassionate and necessary. But with the Born Alive bill not being passed in our national government, it failed. That means they just ignore the baby. They just set this baby aside to die, which to me is just unbelievable. And my mind just can't go there. And then talking about late term, which they don't really even define late term. What is late term? It's not post-term, meaning after your due date. You know, I don't know what late term is. So, and what's the difference between, I mean, I'm trying to think of how you do a truly elective abortion in the third trimester. my brain just can't go there. You know, if this baby can be born alive and live, but California and New York are already doing those. They're already doing late-term abortions. And as far as I know, there's no state that infanticide is allowed. Although, isn't it infanticide if a baby is born from an abortion and you don't resuscitate it and you let it die? Seems to me that's the same thing as infanticide. Have I totally confused y'all? Any other questions? Just anything. Anything goes.
Tonight at church, our priest informed us that it's very neck and neck in the polling. I was kind of surprised. Is that what you've heard?
I don't really pay attention to polls, but I will tell you this. Your bishop, the Bishop of South Dakota, has been on this since last February when I saw him at a luncheon for pastors. And he has really been, you know, encouraging the different parishes. And they have a great, I don't know if you've seen the brochure that the diocese put out that says, where does it say that?
Yeah.
That's an awesome one. In fact, I think I cleaned out the diocese this summer with that brochure. But the Protestant churches I'm struggling with, because a lot of them don't want to touch this. They just don't want to go there. Now, technically, they can't talk about candidates, but ballot issues are fair game, and they can speak on it as much as they want from the pulpit. But yes, I'm grateful to the bishop. What else? What did you say? What you can do? Okay, get out the vote. The statistic that also drives me nuts is only 50% of eligible Christians are registered to vote. And of that group, only 50% actually show up and vote. So every church should have the registration form. It's easy. You print it off, you can go to your county auditor, you can find somebody that has one and it's not filled in and copy it off, and you fill it in. You don't have to have it notarized, but you have to either mail it or turn it into your auditor by October 21st. That's the deadline for registering to vote. And then once you're registered, you have to vote. And now, early voting started yesterday. And I was going to go and early vote, and then a friend of mine had a flat tire, and then I had to do a Zoom call, and by then it was too late. And I went, oh, there it goes. I love going to the poll on voting day and voting. I just love that. But I think I got an email from Life Defense Fund, and they said, vote early, and then on election day, go help other people get to the polls. So we need to get people registered and encourage people to vote early. I don't know, I don't understand that whole process, but I think it has to do with, they know that if you're registered Republican or Democrat, and apparently, I guess they know how many people have turned in their ballots. They're not tabulated until November 5th, the same day as you can vote in person. But somehow they get the numbers, and that's why they're encouraging us to vote early. But get registered. You can go online and check and see if you're registered. And vote.gov, I think. And then you just plug in your name, your birth date, where you live, your county, and it'll spit out all your information. And it doesn't hurt to check that, vote.gov. Or you can go directly on the Secretary of State website, but I don't know that. It's just easier to go to vote.gov. talk to your neighbors. Remember, have compassion, have love. Not everybody thinks the way we do, and that's okay. We need to respect their opinions. And I don't know how many of you know Trey Gowdy. He's my favorite podcast. He wrote a book called It Doesn't Hurt to Ask, and he talks about the art of persuasion. And I'm trying to learn because, you know, I'm a doctor. I just have to tell people what to do. So instead to ask questions, well, why do you think that? You know, your neighbor will say, blah, 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 about the amendment, and say, why do you say that? You know, where's the evidence? Or, you know, just try and think of a kind way to ask a question about why they think that way. The art of persuasion. Any other questions or comments? Any comments? Thank you, Mary, for the great job you did. Working on this. So I will also be doing a talk in Chamberlain on October 10th at the Community Center. I think it's 5 o'clock. And then I'll be in Plankington October
21st.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
October 21st. I'll be in Plankington.
At the Commerce. The Commerce. At the Commerce Grill.
The Commons? Commerce.
Commerce Grill.
The Commerce Bureau. Okay. Spread the word.
Ezra 10:4. Thank you, Patty, for all that good information. And I was going to wrap up with things you can do, but your great questions pretty much covered a little bit. But I do want to just point out my favorite brochure is this one, and by the way, the Casey's printed it in their monthly newsletter this month. Good job. Anyway, I like this one because it's very simple. It just gives 3 main points about what G does. And so I have a bunch of these on that table back there, so pick some of these up. I'm wearing a shirt, and we do have some more shirts, and we have bumper stickers, buttons, and I really want you to encourage you to take something of that nature with you, because it's a great conversation starter. I wore this shirt to donate blood last month, and the staff at the blood drive said to me, well, what is G anyway? I see that all over. And I had the perfect opportunity to tell them, I have a bumper sticker on my car. I had somebody stop me in a parking lot and said, you have a no G on your car. I said, what is that about anyway? There you go. Just get it out there, people. I also have yard signs too, so very good. So that's one really good way. If you have this little 3-point flyer in your head and you're wearing, and somebody asks you, you'll know exactly how to explain what G is. The rest of that we all covered, but I do want to mention the most important, since this is a spiritual battle, prayer is most important of all, and I just got a notice today in my email box that the Priests for Life are having a Right to Life prayer night tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Central on a web page called Endabortion TV, endabortion.tv. So you may not know, but there are 9 other states that are also battling an abortion amendment on their ballot this November too. So we definitely need to pray. Anybody else have any comments they want to make before we wrap it up? Yes.
I would like to ask if anyone could come the first Saturday night of October. We're going to be out at the cemetery at 16 and 45. Because the Sunday is Right to Life Sunday. And I don't know if that's right if I said that, but we're going to be out there on Saturday night because that's when Mass is. And if you could come and join us, we're going to have some signs and we'll try to say we will say the rosary out there. Thank you, and thank you for coming tonight.
thank you all for being here and learning and working towards defeating G. We really appreciate it. So, thank you. Anybody else have any comments you want to make before we wrap it up?